Oh, I guess I can do an update. Um, Let me talk a little bit. Today in the Color Times, they have an article that they did not want to print or talk about because I talked about it the other day. But it was in the San Antonio newspaper that was shining the light on what I feel are unethical practices by the Port of Corpus Christi. And I noticed that the Color Times did not speak about it, but it showed sort of like a process that the Port of Corpus Christi and all of the things they're doing right now, that they were also kind of, in my view, unethically targeting competitors. Now, I covered that somewhat, and for those who follow politics and all, so all of a sudden today, they decided to do an article on what I spoke about. And the article said the Port of Corpus Christi is seeking to stop this other Swiss company called Trafigura from building an offshore facility for storage of oil. Now, as I read the article just now, the Color Times, the spin that they put on it is not correct. They basically showed, yes, indeed, the port is trying to stop this competitor and these companies from building offshore facilities. Now, this is why it was deceptive. The people representing the port, and they had another article I'll get to, I think it was yesterday's paper, the CEO by the name of Strawbridge, but this time they didn't mention him. But what the Color Times said was that the Port of Corpus Christi is concerned, and he even said, maybe I shouldn't say this, but they have environmental concerns with oil spills, and it might be environmentally bad for Padre Island and Port Aransas. And they even took a shot at Port Aransas and said, we wish they would kind of like jump on the bandwagon because the Port of Corpus Christi is really concerned about the environmental hazards that these offshore facilities might have to Padre Island. And why was that? Why did they denigrate the citizens of Port Aransas? The citizens of Port Aransas actually have publicly risen up. There's a citizens concerned for the environment that are in opposition to the Corpus Christi building their own storage facilities right off of Port Aransas. The Port of Corpus Christi actually owns some island area right by Port Aransas, and they've owned it for a while, and they want to develop it to basically store all of these tons and tons and tons of gallons of oil right off of Port A. And Port A had been vocal. Some citizens, the Citizens Environmental Community Citizens Group, has risen up in opposition to what the Port of Corpus Christi wants to do. So this article took a shot by the Corpus Christi leadership, of the port leadership, took a shot at Port A. And it was so deceptive if you read the article. And they basically are trying to make it look like their opposition to these offshore storage facilities is based upon the environmental practices. And the Color Times did not tell you what I told you, that in the San Antonio paper, they actually showed how they were bringing up the past of this Trafigura Swiss company, that they violated particular things. And it was manipulative. Now, my Google sites and uploads, I've been uploading to one called Google Drive, and I pay for that. It's not a lot. And the last 3 or 4 days, they stopped me from uploading, though that's a paid site. It's called Google Drive. And so what I did was I did a couple of tests to try to upload, and they did something, because it says you're offline and I'm online, and the only thing that concerns me is in this whole field of is that the port coming after you jump? No, it's manipulation that you see particularly that's been kind of exposed in the social media companies in this last year. So it just upset me because I gave it a few days, and I realized every time I try to upload a video on Google Drive, it says now you have another 2 hours. Oh, you were offline. Oh, and of course I tested all my other uploads at the same time. It's bad business practices. I do understand that Google and YouTube are now together, but YouTube is still, run by separate, and it's the manipulation. Now, the thing in the local paper that I just checked, I wanted to comment on that because that article, this is real-time update, that article was highly deceptive, and it was the Kohler Times basically trying to tell the community that the port leadership is just concerned about environmental issues of these other companies. No, they're trying to stop any competition. Number two, there was another article I read this last week that the Kohler Times began questioning the dredging. There's a few projects at this port. One is you got to dredge it. Then you got to build a bigger bridge, and we're all in the process of that now. But then it was just revealed recently that the Army Corps of Engineers permitted that project, but it had to come in at a certain cost. Now I'm forgetting, 32 million or something like that for initial phase, and it came in over that. They didn't want to reveal, that was Sean Strawbridge, the CEO of the port. He didn't want to tell the Kohler Times how much over it came. But it seemed like that one phase, which is just a beginning phase, is now getting hung up. And then, as I read that article yesterday or the day before, it said it's a matter of compression. It's a matter of, they're basically saying we can't get we got to cut the cost down, or else the Corps of Engineers ain't going to back up that project with the financing that we're getting. Why was I upset when I see our community? I'm going to talk about the homeless death problem that's not being reported, which is now 3 in the last week. People I knew. What I foresee, our community has problems like many communities. We've had an old historic courthouse, the Wasco County Courthouse, and it's been an eyesore and a hazard for many, many, many years. It's right next to where the Corpus Christi Fire Department actually has their training station, right in that area of downtown. So for years they wanted to either tear it down, but then the city got a grant from the Historic Commission. But in order to get that money, we had to promise we wouldn't tear it down until 2021 or something like that. And then we basically have a structure called a courthouse. And that because of bureaucracy, red tape, and incompetence, we cannot do anything with it. We tried to sell it. Another company was going to buy it. They said they were going to build a hotel out of it, but they had to pay the back taxes of $1 million and you could have it. Well, the company realized they couldn't pay the back tax. Okay. That courthouse, I could have hired my own crew to have the demolition of that courthouse done in if our city cannot deal with a problem like that, which is really somewhat of an infrastructure danger, that building there, we have already begun the process of this new bridge, and we have rerouted. It's cost a lot of money of what's already been done, rerouting, blocking some of the roads. I could see this project in limbo because they had another problem with people that were contracted to do some of these other reroutings and everything for the bridge, for the port, not paying the workers. I could foresee this being a never-ending project. The day that I die, it will still be up in the air. I could see that because I'm seeing problems with it, which is just a sign of what I said before. I could see manipulation. I could see how our media just did something that was manipulative because they work with the people that are like behind the scenes. Now the 3 deaths, or my friend Rick Hart, there's no documentation. no story about Rick Hart dying here at the turnaround, but he did die. Okay, he was a friend of mine, and he did reside in Corpus Christi for maybe a year, okay, or more. But he was homeless, so we don't consider people like that, quote, residents, and their deaths really go unnoticed and unnamed. And then the second friend that's still unidentified, but he was family to me. I have every right, just like a family member would die, to recognize my friends. His name was Philip Casanova. He was a resident for many, many years in Corpus Christi. He had jobs for many years. It's just he was homeless, so they don't consider them, quote, residents. And then there's some questions. If there's another death, possibly, and I can't say who they think these other people might be. Friends on the street often say we haven't seen anybody in a while. The thing that's making me question this, and knowing that it seems like this is just fallen by the wayside, is the first friend who died, who was Rick Hart, was found by another mutual friend. And my friends who live on the street, if they have problems, if there's people that are after them or whatever, look, they know where they can find them because they're on the street. And then supposedly the other friend who found the body of Rick Hart, he seems to be, people are wondering whether he too was killed, and I won't give his name. And then my friend Philip Casanova, who was killed, and they made an arrest. If people feel like they have things going on and deaths are taking place, one of the articles said, like, it looked like it was suspicious because of blunt force trauma and all this. Over the history of my time in Florida Bluff, over many years, there have been homeless friends who have died. Today, they brought it up. They said, so-and-so was beat. A couple of friends who died these last few years. Roger, Don, okay. Then others said, no, they beat him. There was witness that other people beat them up. And of course, I hear all that. But the homeless population seems to say they are just not even, if it was somebody who died on the street because it was violence, and others, they just seem to, the homeless population believes they just don't bother with it, okay? Now, granted, the Philip Casanova one, there was arrest made, and so we're happy about that in the sense that it's being followed up on. But there's a general sense that the homeless can be killed, and that just goes by the wayside because we have all these other things, if you will, that we're trying to get done. And so I'll just give that as a note. I'm upset at the Google Drive because I gave it a few days, and so it's some type of, believe me, I've done this before, so people that have positions of, they have narratives. We have the big news thing going on with the Brett Kavanaugh, Cory Booker now, who's the black senator from up where I walked. I used to go through Newark when he was, I guess, the mayor there in Newark, up and coming and leading the charge. And now they show the story where he basically admitted in writing that he sexually assaulted a classmate when she was a teenager. And he admits that. And, okay. That one side will use that. Oh, John, come on, that was just... Well, he said it. He admitted it in a few things that he wrote. So now they're going to go after that side and that side. So this is just a little update. When you deal with... It's frustrating to me when you think you have things that are reputable or trustworthy. And then you commit time to those things. And then you realize, oh, somebody somewhere, that people have big questions about the fake news, the fake news, the fake news. As a big news watcher, I remember how a mainstream news report flashed on the air. It was ABC, NBC, CBS. They said Paul Manafort just confessed to 5 murders while being held in jail before. Now, somebody that was out there, and they showed it, and the world saw it. Paul Manafort confessed to 5 murders. Oh, that was real news? Of course it was totally fake. So somebody that worked for the organization, NBC, whatever one it was, they're behind the scenes, they type, they write, and they put that up there. And then they said, we're going to check into it, and no, somebody did it. Somebody, when they deleted Trump's Twitter account for like 24 hours, it was a disgruntled employee. Well, so they have the ability to manipulate, to change. So that's obviously that one was fake news. So this is just a little update. You learn as you go. If anybody is doing business anywhere in any sector of society, you hope that you can have reputable things. And the whole social media thing has caused a lot of questions for people that invest on. I've watched some websites that were kind of under attack, and how they basically banned them from just about everything. And how the media also, they would like to silence certain voices. The whole Brett Kavanaugh thing, it's primarily about what? It's about defending the right to abort children, even up into the 1 minute before birth. And it's adamantly about that. That's what that's about. And so maybe there's questions that come up. Maybe people say behind the scenes, Cory Booker said he was a Spartacus moment. Now they got it on Spartacus because he did that. The whole Ted Kennedy, and my daughter asked me the other day because something that was mentioned, and I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat. She said, what's this thing about Ted Kennedy that it's a very famous case from where I grew up. And of course Ted Kennedy crashed his vehicle, left the girlfriend that he was with to die and drown, never reported to the cops. Big thing called Chappaquiddick, they made a movie. All right, so possibly he killed her, possibly. And then he became the top Democratic lion of the Senate who stood up for the rights of women. And when Clarence Thomas, who happened to be black, Supreme Court nominee, he went after him because of various things. So, in general, the people see these things. They see manipulation, they see double standards, all right? So, this is the update. I hope that there's a resolution. One of my friends was crying today because he thinks it might be his son, who is another person that's possibly died, and it's not been unreported. There just seems to be like a lack of the ability to even report some of the homicides, then to ID some of them. Because like I said, there's been friends who have died over the years, and there's not a word said about them. And it's very easy in a community that is dealing with a lot of issues to just let those fall by the wayside, and we don't want them to.